How's it going, guys? It's IllumiGnostic. Let me know about the levels. They're showing that they're low on my readout, but I'm also getting red lines, so I'm hoping it sounds okay out there. Um, Confusing that I'm getting low readings and also red lines. I don't know what's happening. I apologize if it sounds weird. Let me know in the chat. So I just wanted to pop on and talk a little bit about the experiences that I've had and the journeys that I've seen people undergo with Kratom, because it is really an extraordinary thing to witness. I want to start off by saying that this is not medical advice. I have no medical training at all, and this stuff is only meant for entertainment purposes. And to relate my experiences, but it has no, does not constitute medical advice, only my opinions. But having said that, I suffered from chronic fatigue syndrome from the time that I was in my early 20s, and it was absolutely debilitating and horrible. I ended up with a really bad drug problem. I would go to prison during my Saturn return. Interestingly, it probably saved my life. So, it was pretty bad. And it's, when you have one of these chronic syndromes, the problem is that you can't get any answers, you can't get any treatment. So, I had no idea what was happening to me. All I knew is that I felt like I had the flu every day of my life, no matter what. And the doctors were saying there's nothing wrong with you except you have too many white blood cells, which indicates an infection somewhere. But you know what I mean? So you get no answers. You don't know what's happening. And I was like 21 years old. And, at first I thought I had AIDS, and I was so convinced that I had killed my then wife. And you know what I mean? It was absolutely a nightmare. And then I get 2 negative AIDS tests because I didn't believe the first one. I thought, no, the symptoms are... What is Gnostic Luciferianism? I'll talk about that in a minute, but let's get through the Kratom stuff. But I will note that question because it is an interesting one. I almost hate to talk about it because there's so much stigma and people have all these conspiracy theory influenced perceptions of what that means. But let's get through the Kratom thing. So I had this terrible problem and I didn't know what it was. I still don't to this day, really. I still suffer from it. But I've learned to use various plant medicines to rebuild my health to a large degree and to cope to a large degree. And so I ended up primarily with an opioid habit because I had 2 choices. I could either be sick and suffer and do nothing and hate life and lay in bed and scream even sometimes in pain for like a week straight once. Like when I had my symptoms were the worst, I couldn't sleep ever. Like 5 days of just like rolling and screaming in bed with the only thing I could do to stop it was opioids. What are you going to do? And the doctors wouldn't prescribe them to me. So eventually I ended up, buying heroin sometimes. And luckily I didn't really want to get high. So I would just smoke enough to get rid of my symptoms. So that kind of protected me from really getting a serious heroin habit. But I did get to the point where I had pretty serious withdrawals. I went through that twice. The second time I took Suboxone, which completely melted my brain. I've never been the same. Like, I used to be so articulate and quick and like greased lightning all the time. And ever since I took Suboxone, I have been at like 50% of my previous, cognitive capacity. Really severely stunted. I'm starting to get it back after years of using psilocybin and ayahuasca and whatnot and LSD to build my brain back up. But yeah, it was absolutely horrific. It's like, and I was only taking Vicodin at the time that I got Suboxone. So it's like you have an infestation of mice in your house. The equivalent would be dropping a nuke on your house to get rid of the mice. You know what I mean? It was the stupidest fucking thing ever. And someone suggested Kratom to me way back then, but I was like, what the fuck ever? Get your hippie bullshit up out of my space. You know what I mean? Like, it just, and not because, just because I had heard so much crap from people, like just eat elk meat and nothing else, or, you know what I mean? And you just get tired of hearing it, try this herb, and it's like, yeah, right. When things are this severe, a little bit of a plant is not going to do anything for you. So unfortunately, I didn't take that advice, and I would struggle off and on with opioid addiction. And, you know, like I said, in my case, I wasn't trying to get high. So it didn't get too bad, but the problem was that once I started, if I stopped, I would have at least moderate withdrawals, which are horrible. And then I found Kratom. And it is absolutely 100% true that you can walk out of a fentanyl habit, an OxyContin habit, a Dilaudid habit, a heroin habit, whatever it is, with Kratom, with no withdrawals, right? It is absolutely astounding. And after a few months of Kratom, you can begin to taper down the Kratom, and you can walk right out of it as if nothing happened. And, you know, this is why it is being banned. It is not for your safety. The only deaths that have occurred with Kratom have been polydrug deaths, to my knowledge, right? Everyone I've checked on and actually looked into, they were either drunk or they had taken something else and they died. So, you know, you hear all these horror stories. People are trying to make you afraid of it. It is true that if you were really, really dumb and you take way too much of something trying to abuse it, you can die. But the reality is, if you're really, really dumb, there are billions of things that can kill you in the universe, right? It's not the thing that killed you in that case. It's just the fact that you were really, really dumb. And I'm not trying to put those people down because there's nothing they can do about it. But the fact is, you can't cure stupid. Psychedelics don't cure stupid. You know what I mean? It's incurable. But if you are competent and, you know, disciplined enough to act reasonably, then neither chainsaws, automobiles, or Kratom are dangerous to your health. It is true that there are withdrawals, but here is a miraculous thing that I just witnessed at JungleGnosis retreats, which are the retreats that we have in the Amazon rainforest. We still have space open in July and November. If you're interested, shoot me an email and we can discuss further, because there's a screening process, and I only allow people of, you know, like mind to come, because being open to the general public is dangerous for my family and is commercially, you know what I mean? Like, we're just not trying to do that. So if the glove fits, then you can come. July and November. And by the way, it's like half of what the, you know, average retreat costs, because we are in Ecuador. The prices are low. I don't have, you know, a tremendous amount of overhead, so I can afford to do it. And I'm not greedy, so it's a lot cheaper than the $6,000 a week that you would pay to go to Rhythmia or something. And we're not a bunch of narcissists that are running a cult. And Rhythmia is definitely a bunch of narcissistic cult members that are running it. So just saying, I'm not trying to put down all the other retreat centers, but particularly Rhythmia. You guys should watch the Vice videos if you don't believe me. Not good. So hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us, because I put out content that helps people, and I personally have devoted my life to helping people. And there's going to be a bunch of testimonials. We already have one, but the audio's bad. But I'm going to interview these guys again and talk about the experiences they had here at JungleGnosis, which brings us back into the, out of my little blurb and into the content again. And so Eric, who was featured in the video that you guys may have just watched, he was a poly drug addict. He was on meth, heroin, alcohol, all sorts of stuff. He actually quit doing all of those drugs so that he could come here to JungleGnosis. He also had epilepsy. He had 2 seizures in the first 24 hours that he was in Ecuador, and he was still on his medication. As soon as we got him here and I started giving him my tea, which is made from plants from the jungle, probably what helped him was ajo de monte, which is used to treat epilepsy here in the jungle. But it has ajo de monte, uña de gato, guayusa, a relatively small amount of psilocybin, which also increases connectivity between the different regions of the brain. And they think that the seizures are caused because the 2 hemispheres are not communicating. So it could have been that. Also, ayahuasca. So ayahuasca leaves are in the tea, but as soon as he started drinking the tea, he did not have another seizure. He still is seizure free, to my knowledge. It's been over 30 days. So aside from that, though, he had used kratom to walk out of this poly drug habit, and I believe I asked him in the video, but I definitely asked him when he was here if it was fair to say that he had successfully walked out of a heroin habit without even having to experience major withdrawals because of kratom, and his answer was yes. I did it as well. Decades of opioids, walked right out of it. And it is true that like I think once when I quit taking kratom, I had some like leg jerking. That's why they call it kicking. What is it called? Restless leg syndrome. But the other times I've stopped taking it, I didn't even notice, really. I mean, nothing major. So, this sounds like it's one of those things that's too good to be true, but it's not. And so I really want to encourage anyone out there that is struggling with opioids or know anyone that's struggling with opioids to just take some kratom, because what you can do is, say you take 14 grams a day, it's powder or extract. So you can either weigh it in drops. By the way, if you're interested in extracts, there's an affiliate link that will take you to an information blog that may have links where you can buy extract. The benefit of that is that you can evenly measure the doses and you can taper down, right? But you can taper down either by weighing it or... Eric's addiction was really bad. He was a heavy user for multiple years. So pretty serious. And like I said, I was using moderately, but for 2 decades. So, okay, but so where I was going with that, though, is that I was concerned that because Eric was still using kratom, that we could have an issue because this is an ayahuasca retreat. And the general wisdom is that you need to basically be totally clean before you consume ayahuasca. Now, having actually lived with indigenous people and in indigenous communities and having studied this for years and years and years, I have noticed that a lot of the things that people believe about the dieta are not true. They're just completely bunk, and they were made up by vegan hippies that are trying to push their agenda, and there are no indigenous people anywhere that believe that these dietas are necessary. Just to drink ayahuasca. None anywhere. None. Right? I still see only 2 likes. So if you guys could do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe. If you don't share my videos, no one will see them because the algorithm ignores demonetized videos. So please do hit the like button. And you can support us via the options in the chat or the description. So I've noticed that some of the things that people say aren't true. So I started doing some research and checking in with people that had used kratom, and I was able to ascertain that a lot of people were at least claiming to have used kratom up until the day of the retreat or even right before the ceremony. So I just told him, you need to cut down as much as you possibly can. But I did not ask him to completely quit, and it's totally fine. I've done it myself because I still struggle some days. It does not affect your experience. I'm not recommending it, by the way. I think that it would be best to totally abstain from kratom, just for the sake of being totally clear when you enter into the medicine space. But if it's not possible, if you can't stand the withdrawals and you need to get out of a drug addiction, the reality is that you can safely take kratom, in my experience and in the experience of Eric and everyone else I can find on the internet, right? You'll still have an experience, you will not die, and the ayahuasca will help you to overcome the kratom addiction. By the time Eric left, he was taking almost no kratom, right? So he went from, I think 3 months ago, full-blown heroin meth addict, to kratom, tapering down, ayahuasca, no more kratom. It only took 3 months. And the reality is you cannot buy kratom here in Ecuador easily, and I know that he is still here. He may arrive in the United States like tomorrow, so he's been without kratom for at least like 6 or 7 days. He's totally fine. He said, some minor withdrawal, a little bit of difficulty sleeping. But if you compare that to what happens if you quit taking heroin without tapering with kratom first, and if you watch the video, you'll see that he said the ayahuasca was a tremendous help as well. He also quit smoking while he was here. So it's absolutely true what people are saying about the efficacy of psychedelics to help people, plant medicine and psychedelics to help people with addiction and to get them out of it. And it's an extraordinary thing to witness. And so, like I said, I just wanted to jump on here if you guys have any questions. Oh, and the caveat is that, like I said, there are still some withdrawal symptoms from kratom. They range, though, from person to person, from nothing to severe, but nothing even in the same ballpark as heroin and other opiates. Deja, he shot heroin. He didn't just smoke it. He was injecting it. He was a full-blown heroin addict. I know for the absolute certainty in that video that he said heroin and meth. So you must have missed that. But absolutely, he was polydrug. Also, benzodiazepines. And between 30 days at our retreat and his own tapering on kratom, he is totally clean. He does not even smoke cigarettes at this point. Totally committed to, he had a junk food diet, totally committed to healthy food. And this is with, I offer some guidance and post ceremonial integration, right? But during the retreats, other than like the little speeches that I give opening the ceremony and closing the ceremony and a little bit of interaction, I deliberately kind of leave people on their own to process stuff. Unless, everyone knows that they can at any time take me aside and talk to me, right? But it's better to let people kind of process stuff on their own, for the most part. And so with, relatively little input from me, the medicine alone is what convinced him to make all these changes and allowed him to walk out of this multi-year polydrug addiction. So, and he's not alone. You guys probably know this, but it's an extraordinary thing to watch it on my own. And you guys, if you follow me, you know that I've known him for like 5 years. He was one of our first subscribers. So I've known him as a YouTube handle, but not in person until these retreats. But it's true. He is tobacco, heroin, meth, benzodiazepines, and alcohol free, having used a kratom taper, and then 30 days at our ayahuasca retreat with a clean diet, lots of ayahuasca, lots and lots of ayahuasca, and good food. And he's doing amazing. Yep. And our other guest has similar stories. He Sangre de Drago too. Both of them had problems with bleeding in the mouth that they apparently don't experience anymore because of Sangre de Drago, which is a completely different story. So let me see about the questions in the chat. We have some questions that are totally unrelated to the subject of kratom, but I did say AMA, so let me have a look at this and see. I don't really know much about the teachings of Christ because I'm not Christian, and I feel that every religion, every major religion was specifically designed to ensure that people do not make spiritual progress and do not have an actual connection with what I call the universal mind, because I don't like to use the word God. I think the universe does have an intelligent energy that is inextricably intertwined into the very fabric of the universe. The idea that the human eyeball just kind of made itself out of nowhere seems a bit ridiculous, but Sky God also seems really ridiculous. So I don't know anything about the teachings of Christ and the left-hand path. Personally, though, well, actually I do. He said, love your neighbor as you would love yourself. That is the one thing that anyone in the world needs to know and do. If we would follow that one line from Jesus, the whole entire world would be amazing. Right? So even though I'm not Christian, and I do see Christianity as one of the most evil and destructive influences in the history of humanity, and that's by the numbers. I'm talking about deaths and cultures, genocides being destroyed, people being burned alive, all that stuff that happened in the name of Jesus. You know what I mean? So I'm not a supporter, but it is true that that one line, love your neighbor as you love yourself, if people would actually do that, the whole world would be healed instantly. The moment people start to do that, that 1,000 years of peace that Christ prophesied will happen. But that goes against the left-hand path. I don't promote the left-hand path, and I think that it's entirely possible to live for your own best interest while also serving the collective interest. In fact, I think it's really not possible to do one or the other. You're always doing them both if you do one or the other. You know what I mean? And so somebody asked about the Gnostic Luciferianism. That's a complicated thing to talk about, but most Luciferians do not believe in a Lucifer angel or a being called Lucifer. Most Luciferians believe in the sovereignty of the individual will. They know that consciousness comes to us on the light, that there are only two things in the universe, void and light. Matter is light in a standing wave. There are only two things in the universe, light and matter, right? So it stands to reason that our consciousness is derived from light. And so Lucifer means light bearer. So in the minds of like Illuminati, for example, an Illuminatus, or any person that has taken an initiation in the Western mysteries, knows that the true Lucifer is just the EMF. It's just an oscillating wave that generates the light. It's the light bearer, right? So real Gnostic Luciferians just reject religion, not necessarily even the teachings of Christ. And they believe that the universe, basically, as I said, has a intelligence that's integrated into the operating system, basically, and that the really fundamental secret of it all is light and consciousness. And they know that you cannot learn from a book meaningfully. You cannot adopt the rules of a religion and then just make an oath to follow them and succeed. You will fail. It has to, real spirituality is the product of an organic internal process. It's not meaningful to just read stuff in a book and then say, okay, I follow this now. So that's what, Gnostic Luciferianism is about, is it's really just understanding light and consciousness and the role that they play in the universe. So if you guys have any more questions, I am totally down to answer them. If you missed the early part of this before we started talking about Luciferian Gnosticism and whatever else, I would encourage you to go back and watch the early part of this video, just to reiterate, because I know there's a few new people who probably haven't smashed the like button and might not share my videos on Facebook and other places since I'm demonetized and the algorithm ignores me. All of this growth, you guys, since 3,000 subscribers is literally just from people sharing the videos, right? And if you don't believe me, you can type IllumiGnostic with the name of one of my videos and you'll have to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. You know what I mean? They've literally told me that they bury my content lower in people's feeds to battle misinformation. And I challenge you to find misinformation on my channel. Find something that isn't true. I dare you. Here's another crazy thing. They actually never deleted a single video from my channel, but they demonetized me for not following community guidelines. So where is the video that offended if nothing has been taken down? That's an interesting question, isn't it? Bobensana for withdrawal is not really something that I've considered, but there is Bobensana in all of the medicine that we consume at these retreats. I consider it kind of an ally plant. The flower is identical to the mimosa tree, the Japanese mimosa, that is invasive in Virginia where I grew up, and my mom and I, that was our favorite flower. And shortly after I started drinking ayahuasca, she committed suicide, and there's something definitely interesting about the fact that this flower that I have this childhood connection with became such a cornerstone of my practice. So, one thing I can definitely tell you that Eric said about having consumed the Bobensana paste during one of the ayahuasca ceremonies, because, we drink it in all of the ayahuasca, but in all of the tea, excuse me. But when we added the paste specifically to the ayahuasca, that night he said that he couldn't stop thinking about his family. And so this idea that the Bobansana opens the heart and makes you connected to that, wavelength of emotion and unconditional love, it did direct his attention to his family. And this is why Ibogaine works on heroin addicts. A lot of people say that it projects you back into your early childhood when you were pure and innocent, and it reminds you of what you were like before you became a drug addict, and that is enough for most people to sort of redeem them or allow them to recoup their sovereignty and their individuality. Oh yeah, anything with anti-inflammatory properties. But honestly, ayahuasca itself is such a great anti-inflammatory and immunomodulator that all of these other plants probably play more of a secondary role. But I don't doubt for a second that Bobansana is a great help, and also the fact that it connected him to his family so profoundly. That's another thing that I feel like could lift someone up out of an addiction, reconnecting with the people that love them and the people that they love, and feeling a sense of obligation to them. And that, all of that sounds like help to me. Okay, so I still have about 12 minutes. Are you guys hearing any hiss or like crackle on the mic? Because I'm just curious whether it's my headphones or if I'm actually having an issue. And then I'm here for 12 minutes for questions. Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing about all of the mimosa family and plants, is that they all have very deep roots, and this is this is also said to be why the Mimosa hostilis version of the ayahuasca brew. So instead of using Chaliponga or Chacruna, you use root bark from Mimosa hostilis. A lot of people say it's more grounded and has more substance. And from a shamanic point of view, just in the same way that the flower of Bobansana looks like a blooming bundle of love, it's just pure white with pink tips and this like gentle little hair. You know what I mean? It looks like it would open your heart. In the same way that the plant that's used for snake bite here has snake skin. It even feels like snake skin. It looks like snake skin, feels like snake skin. The leaves are shaped like snake heads, and it fixes snake bites, especially when you add Mimosa pudica to it. So what I was getting at is that the idea that the roots give a grounded experience because that's their nature, whereas the leaves of Chaliponga and Chacruna are just blowing around in the wind. And so it's a more loony kind of cerebral experience, which I think has just as much value as a rooted and grounded experience, but you should have both. And that's why at my retreats, I actually start out with Chaliponga, then we switch to Amiruka, which is an Ecuadorian version of Chacruna. It's in the same family, but much stronger. And then we combine them both, and then we have an experience with the Mimosa hostilis root added to the brew, so that we get all of our bases covered. Yeah, I see Ohe purges. I don't know what that means. I'm not familiar with Ohe. Maybe that was a typo. I mean, I'll talk about purges in general because that is a fundamentally important part of the the experience of. Yeah, well, actually, fish. So are the Japanese mimosa. They're like 20 feet. They're huge, and it's why it's such a problem when it's invasive, because they all have massive roots. So whoever asked about the OJ purges or Ohe, I don't know what you meant. If you can clarify. But you know, this is one of the aspects of ayahuasca that, as a Western, I guess, person, or non-indigenous person, I guess is the best way to say it. Um, I was pretty skeptical about the idea that you could just vomit up traumas. Uh, and even though I'm pretty open-minded, there are limits, and I have no interest in becoming a muddle-headed mystic, and you know, becoming so open-minded that there's wind whistling through my ears. You know, that's not on the agenda for me. So you know, I was understandably skeptical of the idea that you could vomit up traumas. But the first time that I experienced it, where it felt undeniable, this is a part of an amazing story. I wish I knew what video I told you, I could, so I could tell you guys where it is, but I can't recall off the top of my head. But it was early in my ayahuasca drinking days, and I was sort of forced by the medicine to go walk out into the jungle. I didn't want to do it, but the medicine can take over your anatomy, your biology, and it made me have to poop really bad, but then closed me up so that I couldn't do it out in the yard. I would have to go into the jungle, and she was telling me, you have to go in the jungle to do this thing. And I didn't want to, because it was like the third time I had drank ayahuasca. It was like 4 in the morning, and it's the Amazon rainforest. So I was like, no way. Snake's going to bite me. Something bad's going to happen. I'm not doing it. And she's like, yes, you will, because I can play you like a puppet. And basically, I went down off the porch, and I was walking by this tree, and I realized I had to vomit, so I stopped, and I vomited a bunch. And I had been fasting for 2 days, so it immediately occurred to me, I don't have anything in my stomach. What was all that vomit? And it didn't feel like normal vomiting. The stuff that was coming out didn't feel like it was just weird. And I actually noticed as it was passing through me that there were these black strands. And when each one of those black strands would pass through my throat, the trauma memory that was associated with that particular trauma would sort of pass through with the black strands, as if they were like, you know, MP3s that were playing on their way through my mouth hole. And, you know, those, like my mom yelling at me when I wanted ice cream as a 3-year-old, that, you know, I want ice cream. You don't deserve ice cream, you know, because she was too poor to buy ice cream. So she was angry, and so she yelled that at me. And so it made me feel undeserving of anything. You know what I mean? It seems like a relatively small thing, but that's not how this works when you're that young. And by the way, parents, this is why you have to develop metacognition and know what the fuck you're doing at all times. Mindfulness, understand psychology, metacognition. Otherwise, do not have kids. But anyways, so, you know, that's one that I remember. And I would understand the whole thing, and what it did to me, why it happened to her. You know what I mean? All of the whole chain of causation, with, like, on fast forward as this thing passed through. So, and then I vomited out. And then after all this vomiting, and I realized I hadn't eaten in 2 days, I asked the medicine, where the hell did you get that? And she goes, the same place I got this. And then I vomited up what seemed to be another 5 gallons. And, you know, it was just mind-blowing. Like, where did that come from? What was that even? Barely any water, too. And it was semi-solid, you know. What is it? And so that experience made me, compelled me to take seriously this idea that somehow the medicine is able to sort of solidify these traumas, and the energy is then expelled in the form of vomit. And to further the notion that those traumas were successfully alleviated by purging them on the jungle floor, I could tell by my behavior, you know what I mean, adaptations in my behavior after the fact, that I had actually left those traumas on the floor of the jungle, right? I have enough knowledge of psychology to, you know what I mean, to analyze my own behavior and see, like, wow, the influence of that experience was actually vomited up there. Oh, what was that gnarly looking red Ortega cleanse about? You know, that's not nearly as bad as it looks. It doesn't really hurt that much. But there are a number of reasons for the red Ortega. And it's interesting because both of these guys that were here for the last month had totally different reasons for being here. You know, one of them had never had any drug addictions. and the other one, that was like his main reason to be here. And so when I first got here, I told him, if you react very badly to one of these medicines, it's the one you need, right? So if you give someone rape for the first time and they're vomiting and there's snot coming out of their face and all that, they need rape. Another interesting thing is that usually after the first dose of the medicine, you can wait a month. It's not tolerance. It's not tolerance. It's because it has pushed some kind of energetic thing through, and it's just not there anymore, right? Because after the first dose of rape, it doesn't matter how long you wait before you give the next one. It's not tolerance. It's something else. Same thing with Sananga. If you give someone Sananga and they feel like you just put battery acid in their eyes and they are wailing and saying, I'm never doing that again, the next time you give it to them, it'll barely hurt. Same bottle, next night, right? So, I told these guys this, and so I had the red Ortega, and I said, tonight, during your experience, if you would like a cleansing with the red Ortega, we can do that. And so Eric had a really strong response to the Sananga, and he said afterwards his visions were like crazy intense. Matthew had the Sananga, and it didn't change his visions at all, and it didn't hurt that much, right? The Ortega, he hated it. Eric loved it. It didn't affect his visions. Matthew had no visions until I whipped him with that Ortega for an extra, way longer than normal, harder than normal. And finally, after 13 ceremonies with the Ortega, hyperspace opened up 4 hours after he drank the medicine. Another uncanny thing that happened is that Eric drank once and vomited immediately and had the strongest experience of the entire month. There's no way to medically explain that, right? When people talk about how these medicines defy rational thinking and how they, it's true. There's no reason that someone would drink ayahuasca, vomit it up immediately, and have the strongest experience that they've ever had. It should not be possible. There's nothing about that makes sense. And I've seen it numerous times. So that's one of the purposes of the Ortega. The indigenous mostly use it for like bone pain and skin health, and I think they put it in a lot of shampoos for hair health. But it's also just used as an energetic cleanse, and in that sense, it works in exactly the same way that acupuncture does. It is just freeing up the flow of energy through your nervous system. And, again, giving Matthew the Ortega cleanse 4 hours after he drank the medicine. It should be over by now, right? And suddenly he's having visions. The only explanation for that is that the, unclogging of these energetic meridians actually allowed him to enter into hyperspace, So... Yeah, and this comment about how ayahuasca scrapes your organs clean, it feels like I always know that it started to work when it's like feels like a snake is going through my intestines, wriggling around. It's a very common experience for people to say that they're being scanned. Did I pee a lot the first time I did LSD? Yeah, what's up with all these viewers and no likes? Hit the like button, you guys. Help me out here. Like I said, I'm demonetized. I don't get any money for this unless you guys send it to me on PayPal or Zelle. And honestly, anymore, it almost never happens. So luckily, I have some patrons that are pretty loyal. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here at this point because, I have to have support. Otherwise, I cannot justify giving up hours and hours of my time for YouTube. But luckily, we have lots of patrons. And once people become patrons, they almost never cancel. Because the secret streams are so good. And if you don't believe me, ask any of my patrons. There are some in the chat right now, and they'll tell you that it is incredibly mind-blowing stuff, and I'm not really boasting because it doesn't really come from me. Part of it does, but it's, from another author, a lot of it. So, anyways, I don't really think I have too much more to say about this. We kind of already beat the Kratom horse to death. I think my partner probably has dinner ready. So I want to thank all you guys for spending this time with me. I want to encourage everyone to share these videos with people that you think it could help. Also support us via PayPal or whatever other options are in the chat and the description. Also follow my blog because you can order all of the plants that I use from my neighborhood. via the affiliate links in there. Waking Herbs has pickers right around here, so it's the same genetic pool that I use. So when I promote the plants, they're literally the same plants that I use at my retreats. Yeah, it's true. I got demonetized after talking about Kamala Harris's record as a and the thing is, I didn't lie. They didn't even take the video down because everything I said was true. But the next day I had a message from YouTube saying that I'd been demonetized. But they didn't even take the video down because there wasn't a single lie in there, you know. But anyways, you guys, I got to get going. But again, thank you so much. I appreciate every single one of you. You could do anything in the world, and yet you chose to come in here and hang out with me. And a lot of you spent a lot of the, we didn't lose a lot of people tonight. It was holding an audience, and so that's incredibly gratifying. Thank you so much. Please, the best thing you can do is just share the videos all over Facebook and wherever else. We're 50 subscribers away from 8,000, which is incredible for a demonetized channel. I got demonetized at 2,500, so all of this growth is mostly just from people sharing the videos. Yeah, censorship is real. It is totally real. And like I said, I challenge you to find anything hateful, find misinformation on my channel. There's nothing. There's nothing. It's all just, helpful information. But I criticized a couple of U.S. politicians, including Trump. I don't like him either, by the way, just for the record. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm a free-thinking person. And if you're a free-thinking person, you cannot be a Republican or a Democrat. If you still believe in that system, you are basically a zombie, because it's just, they're all Trump, Biden, whoever, they're all puppeted by the same people. It's a little bit ridiculous to believe otherwise, because you all know what happened to John F. Kennedy when he tried to go rogue, right? So anyways, guys, I will see you again very soon. Thank you.